She was just a girl on the sidewalk, invisible to the world, holding a cardboard sign that read, "Can I play for food?" People walked past without a second glance. Some laughed. Some whispered cruel things. To them, she was nobody. But the moment her hands touched the cracked keys of a forgotten piano, everything shifted. The sound that rose from her fingertips didn't belong to the streets. It belonged to something greater. What no one knew was that this night, this performance would force an entire city to confront what it chose to ignore. By day, the city never slowed. Neon lights blinked endlessly. Car horns pierced the air. Footsteps blurred into a rhythm that never allowed silence. In that chaos, people disappeared not because they vanished, but because no one bothered to see them. And among the thousands of faces that went unseen was Leela. She was small, almost fragile, her clothes worn thin against the cold. She claimed a corner near the plaza, a place where crowds gathered and street performers filled the air with sound. But she wasn't like the others. No bright costumes, no amplifiers, no tricks to pull the eye. Just a cardboard sign with shaky writing, "Can I play for food?" Most people dismissed her. Some turned away quickly, as if her presence reminded them of something they didn't want to acknowledge. Others smirked, whispered, or tossed coins without ever meeting her eyes. To them, she was background noise, one more thread in a city too tangled to care. But Leela hadn't always been invisible. Once, her life was filled with warmth and music. Her father, a factory worker, used to hum after long shifts. Her mother, exhausted from double hours at the diner, always paused to smile when Leela played the old upright piano in their tiny apartment. That piano was her sanctuary. Even when the world outside felt heavy, she could lose herself in melodies that seemed to lift her beyond the walls of their struggling home. She was gifted. Even her teacher had said so, calling her a prodigy. Notes flowed through her like second nature, as though her hands had been made for the keys. She dreamed of concerts, of grand halls echoing with her music. But dreams don't always survive. The weight of reality.it started slowly. Her father lost his job. Bills stacked high on the kitchen table. Her mother's health began to falter, and with every hospital visit, the savings thinned. Within months, everything unraveled. The apartment was gone. The piano was gone. And the family that once filled a room with music was scattered by forces they couldn't fight. Leela found herself on the streets, her life compressed into what she could carry. The nights were the hardest. Hunger gnawed constantly. Sleep came rarely, and the cold pressed in no matter how tightly she wrapped herself. Shelters were crowded and sometimes unsafe. Still, she carried one thing: no one could take her music. She hummed fragments of Beethoven, Chopin, songs she had once practiced until her fingers ached. Music became her anchor, her proof that she was still more than what the world saw. But the world did not see her gift. It saw only her dirt-streaked face, her ragged clothes, her sign asking to play for food. Some laughed outright when they read it. A homeless girl, a pianist? The idea was absurd to them. Who could believe talent might live inside someone who slept on sidewalks? Still, Leela kept searching. She peered through music store windows, longed for the pianos locked behind glass. She slipped into empty churches, brushing her fingers against keys when no one was watching. And finally she found it, a battered upright piano sitting neglected in the plaza. Its wood was scarred, its keys yellowed, some broken. Most ignored it, some mocked it. But to Leela it was a doorway back to herself. She would sit near it with her sign waiting. People scoffed. Some tossed coins not out of kindness but mockery. Yet she stayed. She was waiting not just for food, not just for sympathy, but for a chance. A chance to prove that behind the dirt and silence lived something no one could deny. And when her fingers finally touched those broken keys, the world around her would change. Not all at once, not with kindness from everyone, but the city that laughed would be forced, if only for a moment, to listen. The first time Leela slid onto the piano bench in the plaza, the wood creaked beneath her, almost as if warning her she didn't belong there. She hesitated, her fingers hovering above the chipped keys, her chest tight with the weight of 100 eyes that might turn on her at any second. Around her, the crowd flowed like a restless tide, shoppers carrying bags, workers rushing home, children tugging at their parents' hands. No one expected music to come from her. She pressed one key. The sound was thin and even. Another key followed, then another, until a fragile melody began to bloom in the air. It was soft at first, so quiet it nearly disappeared into the noise of the plaza. But something about it, something raw and aching, cut through. Heads began to turn, feet slowed, and then the laughter started. It came from a group of teenagers lingering nearby, their voices sharp and mocking. "What is this? A concert?" one shouted, tossing a coin that bounced off her shoulder. They laughed harder when she flinched, their phones already raised to record. A man in a tailored suit shook his head, muttering, "It's just noise, loud enough for everyone to hear." Others smirked, whispering as though her playing was a joke shared between them. Leela's face burned, but she didn't stop. She couldn't. Each note she played was an act of defiance. Her hands trembled, but the music grew bolder, stretching out across the plaza, weaving between the insults. Some people paused, caught off guard. A child stared wide-eyed. A woman clutched her chest, tears forming as the melody reached her, but kindness was outnumbered by cruelty. Phones captured her not as a musician but as entertainment, a spectacle. Some sneered, accusing her of faking it. "She's not really playing. Must be a track," a man said with a dismissive wave. Their disbelief cut deeper than their laughter. To them, it wasn't possible that brilliance could come from someone like her. Then the heavy boots of a security guard approached. His shadow fell across the piano. "You can't sit here," he barked. His tone wasn't one of rules or order, it was disdain, as if her presence was offensive. "Just one more song," she whispered, her voice breaking, but he crossed his arms unmoved. Around them, the crowd buzzed, submerging him to let her stay, others smirking, eager to see her dragged away. For a moment, it seemed certain the music would end before it had a chance to live. Then, from the back of the crowd, an older man stepped forward. His voice cut through the tension. "Let her finish." His words carried weight, and the murmurs of agreement grew louder. The guard hesitated, glaring, but finally stepped back. Leela swallowed hard, her heart pounding. This was her chance. Maybe her only one. She closed her eyes, letting the noise around her fade, and began to play again. This time, the music surged, stronger, braver. Each note carried the weight of nights spent shivering on concrete, of hunger that hollowed her, of dreams that refused to die. The plaza shifted. Mockery dulled into silence. Awe replaced skepticism. People held their breath as her fingers danced across broken keys with a grace that didn't seem possible. Phones that had once filmed to mock now captured something undeniable, but not everyone was ready to accept it. A man near the front sneered, shaking his head. "No way this is real. She's a scam. Somebody else is playing." His voice carried, and others nodded, clinging to disbelief rather than face the truth. That disbelief hurt more than laughter. It wasn't just doubt, it was refusal. Refusal to see her, to admit that brilliance could wear a ragged coat and sleep under bridges. Refusal to let her humanity exist. Her chest tightened, but she pressed on, her music swelling until it drowned the whispers. For a brief, fragile moment, she felt as though she had broken through the wall the world had built around her. And then, just as the final notes faded, the applause erupted, louder than she had ever imagined, thunderous, rising from the same people who had doubted her minutes earlier. Strangers clapped, shouted, cheered. Some even cried, but not all hands clapped. In the back, faces remained hard, jaws clenched, eyes burning with resentment. For them, her talent wasn't inspiring, it was threatening. And Leela knew, standing there with her heart still racing, that the fight was far from over. The applause would fade, the hunger would return, and those voices of hate, the ones that cut deeper than silence, were not finished with her. This night had given her recognition, yes, but it had also made her a target. The question now wasn't whether she could play. It was whether the world would ever truly let her be heard. The cheers still echoed in the plaza, but they didn't protect her. Applause could lift you, yes, but it couldn't shield you from the eyes that refused to see you as human. Leela stood, her chest rising and falling as the last note lingered in the night air. She wanted to believe the clapping meant she had broken through, but deep down, she knew better. From the corner of her eye, she saw them. A group of men standing just beyond the glow of the streetlights, their arms crossed, their faces hard. They hadn't clapped, not once. While the crowd thinned, they stayed rooted, staring at her with that cold, unflinching look she had seen too many times before. She packed her small bag quickly, her hands trembling. The plaza felt different now, emptier, darker, every shadow holding a threat. She told herself it was nothing, that they'd go their way and she'd go hers. But when she turned down the alley that led toward the shelter, footsteps followed, slow, heavy, intentional. Her pulse quickened. She tried to walk faster, but the footsteps grew louder, closer, until one of the voices broke the silence. "Hey, little piano girl, think you're a star now?" She froze. The tone was mocking, dangerous. She didn't answer. She just kept walking, clutching her bag tighter. But they quickened their pace, surrounding her before she could reach the street. "You embarrassed us out there," one hissed, stepping so close she could smell the alcohol on his breath. "Made us look stupid in front of everyone. That's not gonna fly." Her throat went dry. Didn't mean. Another cut her off, sneering. "You think people like you get to stand on a stage, make us clap for you? You're nothing." They shoved her against the wall, her shoulders slamming into the bricks. Pain shot through her, but fear kept her silent. Her mind raced. Was anyone still around? Could anyone hear her? The plaza, once alive with sound, was now silent. "Play us a song now," one mocked, slamming his hand against the wall near her head. "Go on. Let's see if you sound so good without your little crowd cheering." Her fingers shook violently as she clutched her bag. She wanted to scream, to fight, but her voice stuck in her throat. The walls of the alley pressed in, trapping her. Then suddenly a light. A phone. One of the men had pulled it out, recording. "Smile for the camera," he sneered. "Let's show the world the real you." Humiliation burned hotter than fear. It wasn't enough for them to scare her. They wanted to strip her dignity away, to turn her into a spectacle once more. She swallowed hard, forcing words out. "Please, just let me go." But mercy wasn't in their eyes. The tallest one leaned in closer, his voice low and venomous. "People like you don't belong up there. We make sure of that." Her heart pounded so loud she could hear nothing else. She thought of the applause, of the faces that had shone with wonder only minutes before. Where were they now? Did they know what was happening? Did they care? And then a sound. "Hey!" The shout came from the end of the alley. A man stood there, older, holding his phone high, recording every second. His voice was steady, sharp. "I've got all of this. Step away from her." The man froze. For a moment, no one moved. Then anger twisted their faces. "Mind your business," one snarled, but the stranger didn't flinch. "This is my business now. You touch her again, and the whole city sees this tonight." Tension crackled in the air. The men glanced at each other, weighing the risk. One cursed under his breath, another kicked the ground. Finally, with a shove against the wall that sent Leela stumbling, they backed away. Their glares promised it wasn't over, but their footsteps retreated into the night. Her knees nearly buckled. Relief and terror collided in her chest, leaving her trembling. The man hurried forward, steadying her with a gentle hand. "You okay?" he asked softly. She nodded, though tears blurred her vision. I think so." He looked at her with eyes full of both sorrow and pride. "Don't let them silence you. What you did out there, it mattered." For a moment, she couldn't speak. The weight of what had just happened pressed heavy on her shoulders. She realized then that the music hadn't just drawn applause, it had drawn hatred too. It had made her visible, and visibility was both power and danger. As they walked back toward the plaza lights, her mind replayed the scene, the jeers, the hands shoving her, the phone in her face, the stranger's voice breaking through. Each detail seared itself into her memory, a reminder that talent alone couldn't shield her from a world determined to push her down. And yet, somewhere beneath the fear, something else stirred. A fire. They had tried to break her, but they hadn't. Not tonight. The question that lingered wasn't whether she would play again, it was whether the world was ready to listen, or if it would always try to drown her out. The night ended, but the echoes of it never left her. Back at the shelter, lying awake on a thin mattress, Leela could still feel the brick wall against her back, the sting in her shoulder where she had been shoved, the sound of laughter ringing in her ears. Applause and cruelty both had found her in the same hour, and that truth weighed heavy. She had dreamed, just for a moment, that the music would change everything, that by touching the piano, she could step out of invisibility, if only for a little while. And maybe she had, but she had also learned that being seen was dangerous. When the world noticed you, it didn't always celebrate it, sometimes tried to destroy. In the following days, she returned to the plaza. She didn't have a choice. Hunger didn't wait for healing. The piano was still there, scarred and imperfect. And so was she. Some of the same people who had laughed before now stopped to watch, their faces softened by memory. A few dropped bills instead of coins. Children tugged at their parents' sleeves, begging to stay and listen. And for every face lit with wonder, there was another shadowed with skepticism, another whisper that said she didn't belong there. But Leela kept playing, not because she believed the crowd would always be kind, but because the music was hers. It was the one thing the world could not strip away. Every note she struck was an act of defiance. Every melody was proof that she was still here, still fighting to be heard. And yet, her story wasn't just hers. For every Leela sitting at a weathered piano, there were countless others silenced before they ever got the chance. Talent doesn't ask where you sleep at night. Dreams don't check the color of your skin, the weight of your wallet, or the home you lost. But society does. And too often, it decides who is worthy and who is not long before they ever open their mouth, lift their hands, or touch a single key. That alley wasn't just a dark corner of the city. It was a reflection of something larger, something that repeats across streets, schools, offices, and lives. The hands that shoved her, the voices that mocked her, they were fueled by more than personal cruelty. They were fueled by a system that teaches people to look down, to dismiss, to erase, because racism isn't always loud. Sometimes it's in the glance that lingers too long, the assumption that talent can't live in poverty, the belief that worth can be measured by clothes, accent, or skin. Sometimes it's the way applause turns to silence once the lights dim, and no one is there to walk you safely home. Leela survived that night because someone chose to intervene. But what if no one had? How many others faced the same darkness, only without a voice to break it apart? Her story forces us to ask, how many prodigies, how many dreamers, how many voices have we already lost, mocked into silence, pushed into invisibility, erased by prejudice before the world ever heard them? The truth is uncomfortable. The truth is that talent doesn't protect you from racism. Hard work doesn't shield you from cruelty. Even brilliance can be shoved into an alley, cornered, mocked, and told it doesn't belong. And yet, there is power in witnessing. The stranger who lifted his phone, who said no when others tried to strip her dignity, he changed the course of that night. One person's decision to see her humanity became the difference between silence and survival. What if more people chose to see? Leela's music still echoes in that plaza. Maybe not every night, maybe not with a crowd every time, but it's there, defiant, resilient, impossible to erase. And when people stop, when they listen, they are reminded of something we too easily forget. Greatness can live anywhere. Beauty can be born from the very places society discards. The next time you pass someone with a cardboard sign, the next time you feel the instinct to look away, to laugh, to doubt, remember her. Remember that behind every face we ignore could be a song we'll never hear, a brilliance we'll never see, a story that could change us if only we gave it a chance. So the question lingers, heavy, demanding. How many more voices will we silence before we finally choose to listen?